Hi, everyone. Whether this is your first NAGC convention or your 30th, and I know there are some of you out there, I hope you are ready for a wonderful weekend of learning and engagement and connection. But now, as program chair, I get the best job, introducing our keynote speaker. Genein Letford is an award-winning speaker, best-selling author, and corporate trainer on creative thinking and intercultural creativity. She is the founder of Cafe Strategies and has inspired and led many to reconnect to their creative abilities in order to produce innovative ideas for an inclusive workspace. Her unique interactive training intersects creative thinking development with building a culture of inclusion and belonging. She is the author of 2 books. She wrote The Future Classroom of Intercultural Creativity and another book, a children's book, which she co-authored with her 4-year-old son. She believes creative literacy is a critical skill, and she is often called America's creativity coach for her work in reigniting creativity in the workforce. Having met her already, I can add that she is intelligent, engaging, and eager to connect. She's also spent 10 years as a teacher of gifted students, so she's a bit of a kindred spirit. Please join me in giving Genein a warm welcome to NAGC.
Would you be mad at me if I asked you to stand up? If you are able to, levántate por favor. And I want you to leap. Go. Okay. All right, now you may sit down. See that? I'm getting them ready for you, right? So when I look at you, I see diamonds. Yes, I know. Try getting through airport security with this one. And when I look through you to your districts, to your classrooms, and to the students you serve, I see acres of diamonds. So this actually is my logo right here. It's a diamond, and not just because diamonds are girls' best friend and they're fun, but metaphorically speaking, I can teach a lot of lessons with the diamond. But there's a foundational story that my company is really based off of. Long time ago, there was an African farmer, and he would be farming his land, and every now and then there would be a passerby that would stop and talk about this field of diamonds that they found and how they struck it rich. And the farmer would just be listening, and then the passerby would leave, and then later on another passerby would come and talk about the field of diamonds that they found. And then after a while, the farmer was like, you know what, I'm done with this farm. I'm going to go out and find my own field of diamonds. And he sold his farm for pennies on the dollar, and he went high and low through the Sierra to look for his own acres of diamonds. He looked and looked until he eventually passed away. Meanwhile, on his farm that he sold for pennies on the dollar, the person who purchased the farm was just walking along the creek, and he saw something sparkling in the distance. And he went and he picked it up, and he said, oh, it must be just a random, just crystal or whatever. He put it on his mantle and went on about his business. 2 weeks went by, and he had a friend come over who happened to be a jeweler, and a sparkle caught his eye. Do you know where I'm going with this? And he said, what is that? What's that on your mantle? And he picked it up, and he said, I think this is a diamond. But he didn't recognize it in its raw form. And so he said, where did you get this? And they walked to the location where they found it, and it turned out there was just sprinkles of crystals that were actually diamonds in their raw form. The original farmer owned, free and clear, acres of diamonds. And that really places me here to ask you a question, right? We're question askers. Are we, as educators, administrators, district leaders, and gifted providers? Are we standing in the middle of our own acres of diamonds and we don't even know it? That's a question I'm going to ask you today, but first I want to give you just a background. I, like she said, come from the K-12 background. I taught third grade for a few years and then taught the music program and then ran the gifted program at my school in Canoga Park, California, Southern California. And then for my students who graduated from my elementary school, I noticed that there was a missing aspect of financial literacy, creative literacy, and entrepreneurship. So I started a nonprofit with my students called Alumni 360, where we met once a month. And then I found myself teaching at the university level. I taught at California State University Northridge, where I taught people who were getting their master's, teachers, how to integrate creative arts and creative thinking into their curriculum. And then I found myself on the board of Donors Choose. Has anyone heard of this organization? All your hands should be up, right? So the board of Donors Choose, because I was a teacher. And for those of you who don't know, this is an organization that allows teachers to bring in materials into their classroom. Donors from around the country can fund their classroom. But on this board was the CEO of LinkedIn, Senior Vice President of Facebook, one of the top women investors in the nation, Teresa Gao, Yvette Nicole Brown, Stephen Colbert, and then there's me, like the kindergarten teacher. But what this shows me is that in 1 week, I was teaching 5-year-olds to clap on the beat, gifted children, my nonprofit, people writing their personal statements for college, and then sitting next to people who were running multi-million and billion-dollar companies in the same week. And so that positioned me to ask a question: what are the true elements needed for a life well lived? Not just financially, but mental health, emotional health, and creative health. What does that look like? And so we are now in a VUCA environment. Everyone say VUCA. I told you I have my background in elementary ed, so there will be some interaction going on. It's just who I am. VUCA, has anyone heard of this term? Okay, VUCA, it was a military term, and the business world has taken it, and I believe it's going to seep into the educational world. VUCA stands for, everyone say volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Does anyone feel like they're in a VUCA environment in the past 2 years, or has it just been me? All right, so we are now in this environment, and we are educating our children to be able to survive, and not just survive, but thrive in this environment. And so words that we weren't talking about 20 years ago, like when I was really going through school, we are really paying attention to now, and that's really what my research and work is on now. Emotional intelligence, adaptability, cultural competence or cultural awareness, psychological safety. This term popped up in the past 5 years, right? And a term I want to introduce to you today, a term called intercultural creativity. What is intercultural creativity? I'm glad you asked. Because I'm an educator, you know we have to do our definitions, right? Because what could mean something to you could mean something totally different to me, right? Depending on our lived experience. So intercultural creativity for me is the combination of cultural competence, or cultural awareness, cultural development, and creative thinking. And so let's look at these separately. First of all, creativity. There's a lot of people out there who think they're not creative because they're not artistic, or they're not excellent in the arts. So they can't sing like Whitney Houston, they can't dance like Justin Timberlake, so they're walking around saying, I'm not creative, and their subconscious is listening to that. So the moment you need to be creative in your work, you've been telling your subconscious, what? I'm not creative. So we need to redefine this term. The work that we're presenting is, the definition of creative thinking is the process of problem finding and problem solving with relevance, value, and novelty. Creativity is found in all fields, in all different ways, including the arts, of course, but it's not just the arts. We have to really make sure our students and ourselves as educators and mentors that we understand that we are creative. It's hard to give something that you don't believe you are. Ooh, everyone say ooh, right? So we have to go home and really think about that. Do I really think that I'm creative? How can I empower my students if I don't even carry that truth myself? All right, so creative thinking sits on a few cognitive skills. Well, actually a lot of cognitive skills, but here's a few I'm going to share. Divergent thinking. Sadly, we have research that sometimes, kids enter our systems at 5, highly creative thinkers, but they exit at 18 with diminished creative thinking skills because we focus on conformity. Divergent thinking, are we giving our students enough time to think divergently and come up with different types of answers? Your ability to reframe, that's creative thinking. How can we look at this a different way? Combinatory thinking. Albert Einstein said the essence of creative thought is combinatory play, right? And then unusual associations. How are you like the snow that fell outside? Think about that. How am I like the snow? Have you ever thought about that, right? Having our students and ourselves look at ourselves through different lenses, different gates. That's a new way of bringing up new ideas. Metaphorical thinking. The power of metaphor is key. Normally held for teachers, preachers, poets, and prophets, everyone needs to increase their ability to think metaphorically. The World Economic Forum said creative thinking is now one of the top skills needed in the workforce. Not me, not this association. The World Economic Forum said this. So if we are educating our students for the workforce, have we even put it in our standards? Our math standards, our science standards, what does this mean? And so that is my definition for creative thinking. And everyone say cultural competence, or you could say cultural awareness, cultural sensitivity, right? All right, do you know that person that brightens up a room just by walking out? Right. All right, that's not a good example of cultural sensitivity, right? You all have that one person in your mind now, right? But do you know that person that no matter where they go, they can connect with people, no matter which ethnicity, what social economic level, which area, location, they are just zoning in and people just feel connected? That person probably has high cultural sensitivity and their ability to really be observant of who they're trying to connect with. And so we're looking at cultural competence. Sorry, that's so small. But the definition that we are using from the work of Dr. Michael Hammer is your ability to observe similarities and differences with complexity and your ability to adapt your behavior in different cultural situations. Believe it or not, this skill is key in your ability to have a life of well-being and connective, because we have social brains that we need to connect with people. So our ability to be culturally sensitively aware is key. Based on the work of Dr. Michael Hammer, I know there's a lot of text here, but some people have a monocultural mindset, maybe because they were raised in a place where everyone looked like them, thought like them, believed like them, and they maybe didn't get a chance to get out and experience people with different cultural backgrounds. And the one thing I want you to see is it's a continuum. People may have a more intercultural mindset. Maybe they did a lot of traveling when they were young. Maybe they had caretakers or parents that really took the time to expose them to different people with different lived experiences. A lot of this work is the formative years work, and I don't have enough time to go into that, but you are dealing with human beings in their most crucial years of their life. Actually, 0 through 4 is the most crucial time, and then 0 through 12. And then, of course, 0 through 25. Did everyone bring their brain today? Raise your hand if you brought your brain. If your hand isn't up, you have a bigger problem at hand. I travel with 2, the one in my head and the one here. All of my work is backed by neuroscience. I was that kid at UCLA jumping in and out of fMRI machines, helping my professors with their data, right? Did anyone else do that when you were in school, or was it just me? Right? They get $30 here, $30 there. But I was just fascinated with the brain. And you'll see why throughout this work. And I believe we have other keynote speakers and other presenters here that are going to talk more about the brain. This is the decade of the brain. All right, so in order for us to really improve our cultural awareness, we have to have self-awareness, other awareness, and situational awareness. And us really integrating this into our curriculum will be key. But my question is, it starts with self-awareness, and it starts with your avocado. quick story. When I was about 25 years old, a friend and I went out to get hamburgers, and not like McDonald's type of hamburgers, but like the high-end hamburgers, right? They're like $15. And she asked me, hey, do you want avocado in your hamburger? And I was like, yeah, avocado. Have I ever had avocado? And so I was like, I don't think I've had it. She was like, what? You never had avocado before? I was like, I don't think so, but I'm a creative, so let's go for it. And so I had avocado, and it was wonderful. It was like there was a taste, but not really a taste, and it's smushy. And I'm like, this is great. And so I went home, and this is a true story, by the way. I went home, and I was like, Mom, why am I 25 years old, and I've never had an avocado before? She looked at me. She looked at TV, said, because I don't like avocado. And I was like, what? Like, you robbed me of 25 years of eating avocado because you don't like avocado? Like, you can put it on practically anything. You can put it in your hair, on your face. Like, and it robbed me of being creative with avocado, right? And so, and this is a funny story because I did a keynote at a beauty conference, and a woman comes up to me. She was like, tuna. I thought tuna came from a can. I didn't know it was a fish. Right? And so everyone has their avocado story of these revelations in your adulthood that you're like, how did I miss that, right? And so this is a very funny story for a very serious point. As an educator going into a classroom, not being aware that I have the whole concept of avocado missing because I haven't done that self-reflection work. Right? And so I'm still a credentialed teacher by the state of California, so I still give you create work or homework. Go home and think about, where are my avocados? What am I missing, and how can I fill in those gaps? All right, so because of this research coming in, we saw that cultural competence and creative thinking, they actually sit on the same set of cognitive skills. Everyone say, Eureka! I know, I said the same thing too. And so we looked at it and we put it together in something called the 7 gems of intercultural creativity. The brain needs relevance, curiosity, and engagement in order to shoot out acetylcholine. Neuroplasticity does not happen without acetylcholine marking that for learning and that whole new making neural pathways. And so if you're not embarking on how do I bring curiosity and engagement into my classroom, there's no learning going on. They might be sitting there, but keep that in mind. So teachers knowing about the brain more will be a move of this next generation. And so how can our insights really help us support our gifted students, the insights of the neural integration? All right, so are you ready to go through our 7 gems quickly yet thoroughly? Yes, thank you. I'm like, you get a gem, you get a gem, you get a gem, you all get gems. I wish I could. All right, like, look under your chair. All right, so, so our first gem, I'm going to say creative growth mindset. Right, based off of the work of Carol Dweck, fixed mindset, growth mindset. I hope I don't have to go too deep into it now. Hopefully we should have an idea of what those terms mean. Intercultural creativity is a creative growth mindset. We have to take risk. We have to understand that you just don't show up perfectly, and be aware that having the label of being gifted, sometimes our kids think they have to start things perfect, right? But we have to model and be that growth mindset journey. So intercultural creativity is a growth mindset journey because cultural competence is a choice. It's a choice. You can choose to stay in your bubble, which affects your ability to relate to your students. Or you can choose to reach out to students who might come from a different background than you. You can choose to sometimes sit in discomfort in those courageous conversations that we're having as a nation. You can choose to integrate and look at your curriculum through multiple lenses to make sure you're making those connections your students need to thrive. That's a choice, and that's in your hands as the educator. Just like cultural competence is a choice, creative thinking is a choice as well. You can choose to take risks, right, and venture into the unknown. And you can choose to redefine problems, and you can choose during those staff meetings to present a crazy idea that might get you laughed at. But a lot of the technology you're dealing with now, or you see now, came from crazy ideas. So creativity is a choice. Is that a choice you're going to make? And the one thing we have to understand is creative thinking and cultural competence, it's an expensive choice. Based off of the work of Lisa Fieldman Barrett, she's a neuroscientist, she gives you the metaphor of a budget. She says you have a metabolical budget, meaning your brain's job is to keep you alive, right? Make sure your organs are working well and to keep you safe. So if you're looking to do something creative, which is to venture into the unknown, that's a higher cost for your brain. If you're looking to connect with someone from a different lived background, that you can't predict their behavior, that's a higher cost for your brain. So if you're sleep deprived, you're not eating well, you're not exercising, you're not taking care of yourself, your brain's like, I'm sorry, I don't have the energy to put over into creative thinking and cultural connections because I just got to keep you alive. See, it's all connected. You have a metabolical budget, and your brain will not want to do that. It's a metabolical cost to be creative. So keep that in mind. And our mindsets affect our students' performance. The work of Carol Dweck as well. And if you ever need any of this work that I say, just send me an email and I'll send you the work. She has a great article saying that the mindset of the teacher, fixed mindset, growth mindset, or it's a continuum, right, no matter where you are, it affects the students, especially students of color from marginalized backgrounds. So if the teacher had a fixed mindset, it negatively affected the students. Have you ever gone through mindset training before you went into the classroom? Now that we have this data, that might be something that our districts and leaders might want to be aware of. What is the mindset? Are teachers even aware of their own mindset going into the classroom? Because it's affecting your students. So one thing that you can do, because I'm all about practical application, as an educator in my classroom, this is my class a few years ago, I can be transparent with my intercultural creativity journey. This is me practicing for a talk that I was going to give, and my students seeing me struggle, seeing that I'm not showing up as perfect, seeing me practice. That communicates more to them than me standing and telling them about it. What they see you do is huge. All right, gem number 2, say the empathetic way. Does anyone know who this is? Call out. Adele. Hello from the other side, right? So about a half a year ago, Adele gave a closed performance to a few celebrities, and after the end of it, a few of them got to ask her questions. And a woman stood up and said, thank you for giving us the inspiration of song. Who inspired you when you were young? And right away, Adele said, Miss McDonald. And she said something that was key, why I keep her in my keynote. She said, Miss McDonald made us care about the content because we knew she cared about us. Look at her face. Adele has not seen this woman for 25 years because after she said that, Miss McDonald stood up and started walking to her. She was like, ah, right? And she just couldn't believe it. She hadn't seen her for over 20 years. Look at the reaction on her face. Adele's reaction shows us what the neuroscience now proves. Connection leads, content follows. The work of Dr. Daniel Siegel out of UCLA, the MindSight Institute, shows us that neuroplasticity happens at the greatest level when there's emotional arousal within a certain limit. So if your students aren't emotionally aroused, neuroplasticity may not be occurring at the level that you wish it to. So what's leading in your class? What's leading in your class? Experience can provide that connection. Shared goals. The number one indicator of a highly creative person is openness to experience. The number one indicator of a highly culturally competent person is openness to people with different lived experiences. Right? The work of the quote of Walt Whitman, be curious, not judgmental. Be open. What does that look like? Because when we shut ourselves off from the cultural connections, we're actually hurting our creative thinking. We don't think about it that way, but that's what's actually happening, because creativity thrives on diverse perspectives. So keeping that in mind, and of course, the brain is our best friend and our worst enemy. I love this 3 pound of jello, right? Which is controlling so much. And I wish I had like 10 hours because we can really get into what's going on here. Implicit bias is one of the things we need to watch out for, right? And so as educators, it's so important because your brain, right now, my words are literally changing the structure of your brain right now. Unless you are totally tuning me out, I am literally changing your brain right now. And so as an educator, as a leader, as an administrator, you are literally changing brains that are paying attention to you, because attention changes the brain, with your speech. So if I have not done my work on implicit bias and what my subconscious holds true as far as who's coming into my classroom, what the media has subconsciously told me about them, right? And I'm not even aware of that, I'm changing their brain, either for the better or for the worse. So keeping that in mind, we have to manage and control for bias because it's affecting those who we serve. All right, for your next gem, everyone say cultural observation. So we talked about professional development, right? You've been to leadership classes, content professional development. Have you ever been to observation professional development? Anyone? No? Well, I hope to change that because of this. Has anyone seen this logo before? Well, I had someone say, you know what, for the longest time, I thought his bow tie was his body. I know, you're like, really? Right? But what is that? Once again, funny story, serious point. So my friend just didn't have the conceptual framework for bow ties because she wasn't exposed to men's formal attire. So her brain automatically switches things and tries to fill in those blanks. So you have students coming to you with different conceptual frameworks. And if you're not reaching out and making connections, seeing their cultural capital, you may not know how, you may be talking about bow ties and they see stick figure bodies. And there's a whole disconnect there. And so we need to be aware that exposure affects observation. And creativity is dependent upon your ability to observe. And the work of Erin Meyer, she's a cultural specialist, she also talks about how culture affects observation. She has a great book called The Culture Map. And she talks about this study where, by the way, when I say culture, I don't just mean ethnicity and nationality. A culture is a group of people with verified attitudes, beliefs, and systems, right? You can have an HR culture. You can have a gifted culture, right? I say the theme song of culture is, this is how we do it, right? Like, this is how we do it. This is how we run things. That's what I mean by culture. And so, but in her study, she talked about ethnic culture and nationality. She said people from Western cultures, when they looked at an aquarium, they focused on the foreground of the aquarium. People from Eastern cultures, they more focused on the background of the aquarium. And what this shows us is that depending on where you grew up, what cultural systems you were a part of, it affects how you observe. And this is critical for diversity, because if you're in a group where everyone is the same, basically, yeah, you're all seeing the same things, you're all agreeing upon the same things, but you're also missing the same things as well. And so that's why this is critical. When I say observe, I don't just mean to see things. Observation comes from the Latin to observe. It means to attend to. Observare, right? Who speaks Latin nowadays? I have no idea. But I love the etymology of words because you can really dig deep. And so my question is, what are you attending to? What has your attention? And in your classroom, what has their attention? What has their attention? Something for us to think about, something practical to really get your observation up is the arts. Now, I was adamant at the beginning. I said, creativity isn't just artistry. Stop thinking it's just artistry. It's in every field in multiple forms. But part of my research, and I'll be writing my next book next year about this, artistry increases your creativity in non-arts fields. Do I have a out there? All right, I know I have a few arts advocates, right? And so here is why. The arts increases your cultural awareness. There's that tie again, creativity and cultural sensitivity. Because it complexifies your brain. It complexifies your neural pathways, your corpus callosum, which is that middle section that's connecting the two hemispheres together. It complexifies and makes it thicker. And I am going to position myself to say that this is not only the decade of the brain. If it was up to me, this is the decade of taking the arts seriously. Amen. And the beauty is we actually have the neuroscience to prove it. Before, like, yay, the arts are really fun, yeah, music. But now we're like, no, yeah, we got the studies to prove it. And it's almost a level of injustice if you look at a brain that's been exposed to music versus the brain that has not. And once I saw that, I was like, okay, Sean, you get on that piano now. Like in our house, reading, music, reading, art, reading, dancing, same weight. And so what the arts do is they increase your emotional intelligence, right? I'm so glad that they had the band here. It increases your multi-sensory engagement. Your senses are heightened. It increases your learning flexibility. Microsoft put out a study saying that's one of the top things they need of their people, learning flexibility. So in order to do the arts well, you have to it's a creative growth mindset journey. Like no one comes out the womb playing the flute, right? You have to work at it. It's a part of it. And translation of ideas. Your ability to translate ideas, and if I had more time, I would just totally do something. We might do it tomorrow. But to translate the concept with your body, with the musical phrase, with a poem, that's a creative skill that will be needed in the workforce. And the work of Dr. David Eagleman, he talks about how the arts are the overt process of blending, breaking, and something else. Blending, breaking, and another B word. What is it? I don't know. All right. And watch it come to me like right when I walk up the stage. But it's a great work, Dr. David Eagleman. Blending, breaking, and something else. Anyway, I'm going to move on. Like that's going to bother me. So, but the arts are the overt way of doing that, right? And in the sciences, in the other areas, it's more covert. They're bending, breaking, and fill in the blank, but you can't really see it. What is it? Does anyone know? Bending, breaking, and blending. Yes, thank you, blending. You come to me and get a diamond pen. All right. And I'm actually serious about that. So blending. The arts, you do that overtly, you practice it, but it's an underlying skill in all the other areas of life. And so be very mindful of that. And once again, the work of Dr. Nina Kraus and Dr. Annie Patel out of Tufts University shows how having a music background, it's critical for language, sound development. If you have any kids that are dealing with speech or anything like that, music will help them. Having a dance background. This part of your brain, you didn't think you would come to this conference and get some brain background, but this part of your brain is your cerebellum. It's needed for balance and walking and dancing. But what they found out is, number one, tons of your neurons are down there, and most of the cerebellum's job is to monitor the prefrontal cortex, which is needed for decision making, future planning, imagination, creativity. So when you dance, right? Sir Ken Robinson said it in his TED Talk about Gillian Lynn. She had to move to think. That's why. And so we now know that we need to get our kids up and moving. But if we can integrate it in math, how do you integrate dance and math? How do you integrate science and dance and science and all these other areas? It can be done. That's a big, big part of this next revolution of learning. Everyone say cultural curiosity. All right. Who knows the leader of curiosity? Does anyone? Call out. Oh, I know. You get a diamond. She was like, where's my diamond pin, right? Awesome. So, Curious George, the curious little monkey, right? Who knew this little monkey that was running around, touching everything, annoying the man in the yellow hat, had the top trait that the workforce and the C-suite needs in order to keep their organizations afloat? If you don't believe me, I brought in the doctor. The doctor says that if creativity is the driver of innovation, curiosity is the driver of creativity. The doctor who I am referring to is Dr. Alison Huysmeister. I have a podcast, and I love to invite really cool folks. And so she got her doctorate from USC in curiosity. I'm like, who gets their doctorate in curiosity? She does. Workplace curiosity. And she said the cool thing is when you look at the level of curiosity of your leadership, those of you who are in leadership positions, which we are all the leaders in some way, they have the ability to look at the resources that they have in front of them and exploit those resources and use them well, but they also have the ability to look around the corner to see what's coming. What does the gifted association group look like 10 years from now? Have you taken that time to think? That is the curiosity aspect. And no one has to teach this to you. You came here with this skill, right? Did anyone have a 1-year-old where you're like, here's how you touch everything around you. Here's how you put everything in your mouth. No, they just come here with this ability. The thing is, do we educate them out of it? Ooh, I know. Ooh. Right? I like it. Yes. And thank you for being here. Give a round of applause to our signers. And that's actually a creative skill as well, being able to communicate in different methods and forms. Really, really critical. And so we come here ready to connect. And so curious children end up as curious adults if they can hold on to their curious mindset. So we need to redevelop it in our teachers and administration, and we need to protect it in our children. Because curiosity is that driving force, the motivation that gets them to learn. And once they leave your classroom and they leave the K-12 system, that driving force needs to be within them because they don't have a teacher with deadlines over them. All my neuroscience research, that was me. I had no professor over me forcing me to do that. Some people have it, some people don't, but now we all need to get it back. So keeping that in mind, psychologically safe classrooms increases the curiosity of our students. If they can ask those crazy questions instead of, stop asking questions. Or the person I spoke to earlier said her child has a speech impediment and the teacher sometimes won't call on him because he'll take too long to answer. That broke my heart. And so teachers who are culturally aware can really create a classroom where all students can succeed, especially those twice exceptional, those who need some extra support in some areas. They are aware of that. All right, you ready for your next gem? Perspective shifting. This is Clint. And when Clint was, in grade school, he would just be tapping, right? And the teacher's like, Clint, stop tapping, right? The kids are like, oh my gosh, he's tapping again. And then he tried to put his hands under his seat and doing all that, and he gets sent to the principal. The principal's like, just do something, just calm your hands down. Clint's like, I'm trying. And so another year went past, and he's in a new classroom, and then it would start again, and he would just go for it. And then the teacher, Mr. Jensen, said, Clint, see me after class. And Clint's heart fell because he knew he was going to go to the principal or just get in trouble. And so as the students filed out the classroom to go to recess, Clint just sat there, just so defeated. And the teacher came up and said, Clint, don't worry, I don't think you're a problem. And the teacher reached his hand out and said, "I think you're a drummer." And he grabbed 2 drumsticks and put it in Clint's hand and said, "Have you ever thought about taking drum lessons?" And it changed Clint's life. He ended up drumming for some of the top bands around the world. And he now, you can look him up, he now actually speaks to schools, so I should say, hey, I gave you a plug. He actually now goes and speaks to schools and about what this teacher did in his life. He said, I think you're a drummer. Instead of looking at Clint like a problem, you're annoying the class, will you be quiet, he shifted his perspective and said, wait, there's something else at play here. Let me take a step back, observe, be curious, and see if I can connect with this student a different way. And changed Clint's life. And now he's doing amazing things and drumming on stage. I was actually at doing a keynote, and I look back, and it's Clint walking down the stairs. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're here! And he was the main keynote speaker, and because now he does keynotes. But he shares his story, and he wants to tell people to be a Mr. Jensen. To take time, and as opposed to just having judgment automatically, take time to take a different look at your students and say, is there something else at play? How can I make a new connection? So do we see ourselves in different perspectives? Of course, I love to bring the research to you. On my podcast, I sat down with Dr. Michael Platt, one of the head neuroscientists at the Wharton Business School, and he said, in great book, by the way, if it was up to me and I was like the principal of the world, I would make every leader read this book. It's very short, fast read. And he said perspective shifting is key for creative thinking because you're able to look at problems from different lenses and different perspectives, but it's key for cultural awareness and competency because you're able to get in the shoes of different types of people if you're able to make that connection. It actually increases your creative brain and your cultural, your social brain. He says your brain is highly social. If you look up the work of Matthew Lieberman out of UCLA, your brain is highly social. So you being able to shift perspectives is key, and it gives your kids and you the advantage. And in order to increase our advantage, we need to increase our vantage points. All right. A lot? I know it's a lot, and that's why I say go deeper in the book. But this is key. These are the elements that are going to be critical for this future of work and this future of life. Everyone say authentic adaptation. Have you seen him before? He's mostly known for what? Peanuts, right? Oh, isn't that the peanut guy? So sad because we're reducing him to that, and he was brilliant. A lot of people don't know, so he was actually, this is George Washington Carver, hence the name there. He was born enslaved, right, on the tail end of slavery as a baby, almost left for dead in the woods. Someone found him, I believe his former masters, but they actually adopted him and took him in, taught him to read. But if you read his life story, it's profound. Did you know he was an international award-winning painter? International, not just American, international. And he would be out in the woods, then he would be painting what he saw. And so the thing about art and painting is it makes you see. Georgia O'Keeffe says that. She says to see a flower, you have to take time and slow down. Like to make a good friend takes time, to see a flower actually takes time. And there's a neurological reason for that. So he was a painter, he was a musician, he was an entrepreneur, and his curiosity drove him to level by level going up in his education. People don't know that. He actually applied to a local university in Kansas, went there, showed up, but they turned him away because he was black. And so he went to Iowa State. And I often think about that university, like you lost the chance of having George Washington Carver, a 10-year institution, because of racism. Not only if it's wrong, but you're cutting off the creative potential of your organization when we don't have these diverse voices there. Keep that in mind. So George Washington Carver was highly creative, but what people also don't know was he was highly culturally competent. He stood and worked with formerly enslaved people to teach them how to work the land and how to create a life by farming. But in the same week, the President of the United States called him to give him advice on the agricultural plan of the nation. Gandhi called him. The Russian government called on him. And so to be able to shift through these different cultures so quickly is a skill that I want my students to have. That's going to be critical. And so one thing that I say about authentic adaptation is that we have to learn how to adapt. But the authentic there, I made sure to put the authentic there because we have to be authentically us. Correct? You have to know who you are, and that's where the self-awareness comes in. Adaptation is key. Being able to adapt for us as educators and administrators, but being able to teach our children, our students, our youth to adapt as well. How often do we have that embedded in the lesson where the answer isn't in the back of the book? Because when you get out to real world, the answer is not in the back of the book. If that's your experience, congratulations, that has not been my experience, especially these past 3 years, right? And so have I placed this in my lesson plan on giving them opportunities to build, it's a muscle, to build the muscle of adaptation. And so the work of Dr. Shimi Kang, she has a great TED Talk, Shimi Kang. She talks about adaptation being like a pod, P-O-D, a pod. P stands for play. We have to play. That's another thing, kind of like the arts. Play is really gaining some ground. Now I do a lot of corporate work, and I'm doing some work with a medical center and doing some leadership training there. And I'm like, yeah, here's the Legos and the Play-Doh. But now I have the neuroscience to back it up. So I have leaders who are leading multi-million-dollar companies playing with Legos because it's a metaphorical representation of whatever we're talking about. So your creativity is opened once you enter it through a new gate. And the fact that I have my K-5 background, it makes sense. Because don't forget, your children are at the highest creative potential, right? And so bringing that into adulthood is key. And so P stands for play. Allowing our students to play, but also allowing us to get back to that level of playfulness is key. O stands for others. Like I said before, we're a social brain. Thank you. We're a social brain. And so isolation is actually as dangerous as some of the top, of cancers and everything. Isolation is really bad for your brain. And so allowing our students to be able to connect. And D stands for downtime. What a lot of people don't know is that acetylcholine hits the brain when there's engagement and curiosity, but neuroplasticity actually happens during deep rest and sleep. So if you're not sleeping, if your students are not getting a good night rest, that can really affect the brain getting that learning in there and getting it into long-term memory. So play, others, and downtime. Really being aware of the pod. Is this all making sense? Okay. Your last gem is being a bridge. Being a bridge and creating across cultures. In wartime, what's the first thing you really take out in order to make your enemy fall? You take out bridges, you take out ports, because they are sources of transferring resources, right? But in our case, we want to do the opposite. We want to build bridges, and we want to be bridges. We want to be bridges for our students, be bridges for our colleagues and our co-workers. We want to be bridges. And now, like I said before, this is the decade of the brain. And the research shows that the neuroscience lab is a bridge too far from the classroom. This is time for us to connect and really say, your heart is great, your kidneys awesome, liver wonderful, but I'm focused on your brain. And even if you say, emotions are actually formulated in the brain. So you're focused on their brain. And so for us to know more about the brain, the sections of the brain, how to calm down the brain, how to reset the brain, right? And implement that into our teaching. That will be key. So Dr. Kenneth Weston, who's a neuroscientist, talked about if there's deficits your kids are dealing with, it's just reflections of neurological investments. I have to reinvest in this area, and asset-based investments as well. So learning is integration. It's not just forcing new information into the kids. Learning is knowing what they know and integrating the new information. And I know you all know this. That's why we do the KLW charts, right? And all that good stuff. We want to know what they know. And so the 7 gems are going to be key for our gifted students to be able to operate and adapt in this next era. The rules have changed from when you and I were, I don't know how old you all are, but I was growing up in the 80s, right? And you just do this, this, and this, and this, and everything's made, right? Yeah, that's out the door. They have to be able to adapt. They have to be observant of nuances, right? The work of Dr. David Rock talked about people who are observant of nuances are going to be the ones giving those creative ideas. And so making sure our kids are exiting our class with these gems will be key. My 3rd grade teacher would be very surprised to see this picture, because she had to send me to speech therapy 3 times a week. There's times I couldn't even say my own name without stuttering. It's been a journey from the speech therapy room to this stage. But because I knew it was a creative growth mindset, and I had teachers like you to support me and give me services and take time to allow me to focus my responses and get it out, that's huge. And I had teachers who were aware of their cultural lenses and did the work and made sure they were giving people or their students opportunities, make sure there's like the universal, and I've been in a few conversations with you, and universal screenings and things like that, making sure kids aren't falling through the cracks who are gifted, but we're not seeing them as gifted because of our cultural lenses and our subconscious messaging, right? That's some serious stuff there. I wonder how many gifted kids are in our prisons. I just wonder. And my heart breaks because they fell through the crack. And so, once again, as I close, everything I do is for a metaphorical reason. Highly creative people are metaphorical thinkers. And as educators, you know you've used metaphors to make points, right? Like I'm the top person of metaphor. And so the colors remind you of the what? The rainbow. Sometimes I hear some other responses, but for me, it reminds me of the rainbow. And there's a reason why I do this. Louis Armstrong comes from, does anyone know what city Louis Armstrong is from? New Orleans, right? And before he passed, he was like, you know what, I want to bring my band to New Orleans. And New Orleans said no, because he had an integrated band. And Louis Armstrong was like, New Orleans, but it's me. You know, if you fly in, it's Louis Armstrong Airport, Louis Armstrong. Like, his name is everywhere. But does anyone know where his body is buried? New York. Because he told my family, do not bury me in New Orleans, because they can't see what I see. He saw intercultural creativity. And I did a keynote, like I said, in New Orleans in January, and I watched the band, and they were integrated, men, women, and all different ethnicities. It was like, wow, I'm watching the imagination of what Louis Armstrong had. And so I leave that with you, because Louis said, the colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, sing, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies crying. I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, What a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, everyone, what a wonderful world. So as you go back to your districts, your schools, your classrooms, and your communities, don't forget, you are surrounded by acres of diamonds. Thank you.
Creativity, culture, curiosity. I can't think of a better way to start off this week. So, as many of you know, we will now be opening our expo hall. Genein will be signing copies of her book. She actually has 2 books. One of them is The Future Classroom of Intercultural Creativity, Building Students Who Connect and Create Together. This will be she'll be signing these books in the exhibit hall during the opening reception that'll be happening now. She, again, as she mentioned also, she will be doing a breakout session tomorrow morning. So I encourage you to join her again tomorrow. So right now, please feel free to join us up on the 3rd floor in the expo hall in the grand ballroom. This will be an opportunity to meet our many exhibitors and supporters who are here this year and reconnect with old friends. There'll be appetizers, there'll be a cash bar, and also don't forget to play our Scan and Win game in the NAGC 22 app. There'll be drawings throughout the convention. The first one will be this evening at 6:50 at the NAGC Central booth. And for those of you who are a first-time attendee, and I know many of you are here, don't forget to join us at the First Timers Orientation session for a full overview of how best to navigate NAGC 22. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon, and we look forward to seeing you upstairs.